Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys an in-game lesson against a 2600 international master. I played this game with 95% accuracy. It's one of my most impressive in-games ever, in my opinion, even though it's just a blitz game. I was very proud of it, and there's a lot you can take away from it. So hopefully you guys can learn and be entertained in this game. We open with a French defense opening. As you can tell by these little pages, that means it's all book moves. That means these moves have been played hundreds upon thousands of times before. Knight to f6, I retreat my bishop, and now he plays pawn to c5 because he wants to go ahead and pack the center, not the blunderous move queen takes d4, because I just played bishop to b5, and now it's a discovered check, and my queen is attacking and going to win his queen. Knight c6 obviously doesn't work. It's pinned by the queen, so I can just capture. So instead of that, we have this very practical move, pawn to c5. I exchange the d-pawn off the board, and now I've developed all my pieces. I don't want to lose my light square bishop for a knight in such an open position. Open positions favor bishops, so instead I opt to play bishop to b5, exchanging my light square bishop for his light square bishop, and then afterwards I castle. We exchange the queens off the board because typically master players will do this. The endgame is the most studied part of chess, and it is looked at as one of the most boring parts of chess. So when you see an untitled player versus a titled player will often try to take the game to an endgame where they assume they have a lot more experience. I'm not the typical untitled player. I love the endgame. I live for it. All right. So I was more than happy to go into this. The only imbalances in the endgame to start out are that I have control of the only open file on the board, the D file, all right? My rook controls the open file, and then I have a 3-2 majority on the queen side, meaning if I'm going to create a pass pawn, which is the win condition for every endgame, it's probably going to be on the queen side. So before I get ready to get any of my pieces into the game, I move my knight to b5, threatening the pawn on a7. He defends it, but now it was a dual threat because I want to go knight to b6, and now I've managed to create a second imbalance in the position. I now have a bishop, and my opponent has two knights. And remember what I said earlier? Bishops favor open positions. The game continues, knight to c3, and now I double up the rooks on the d file because it's the only open file on the board. I need control of it. My advantages in this position are very slight, if not minuscule or non-existent, but nonetheless, after bishop to g5, knight to e4, I'm piling pressure on my opponent's position, and he decides he doesn't want to deal with any of it. And now I open up my opponent's second weakness of the game. I play bishop takes f6, and now remember, I wanted the bishop against the knight, right? So why would I go ahead and trade it off? The answer is pretty simple. After knight takes f6, pawn takes f6, I've managed to create a new weakness in my opponent's position. These doubled pawns. And I'm going to eventually win this game off of that weakness combined with the strength of owning the d-file. After pawn to c3 to defend my pawn, the game can use king to e7, he lifts his rook, and now I start getting my king into the game. He plays pawn to f5, and I play pawn to f4 with the intention of locking the pawns up. He plays pawn to h5, king to f2, pawn to g3, pawn to h4, and now because these double pawns are here, right, it doesn't look like it changes much in the position, but remember, this pawn used to be on the g file. It used to be right here and guard this square. Now, my king will one day walk like this, straight into my opponent's position. And I see that as the win condition, but I know it can't happen yet. I need to force my opponent to defend. So whenever you're trying to create threats in your opponent's position, it's important to look at the weakest point in his position. This b7 pawn is a backwards pawn, meaning it's behind this pawn. So I put my rook in front of it. Now this pawn can never move. He exchanges the h-pawns, and now he offers the trade of rooks, and I move my king. Remember that king walk I said earlier? He obviously sees what I want to do, and he plays rook here, cutting down my king's access into the d5, d4, and eventually e5 square. I bring my rook back, and now I offer the exchange of rooks, and my opponent declines it as I knew he would, because this endgame has to favor me ever so slightly with these double pawns. My opponent continues rook to h3 with the idea of swinging the rook down here, and I play this very passive looking move, rook to d3. It's a dual purpose move. It protects both the g3 and a3 pawns, and it once again opens up the d4 square for my king. After rook to h2, I play king to d4, rook to e2, cutting off once again my king's entryway into the position. But I once again offer the exchange of rooks, and remember, my opponent doesn't want to hop into that endgame because he has the double pawns. He plays rook to c2, and this is my moment of brilliance. I don't know if the game gave me anything for it, But I play king to e5 with the idea that I'm offering this pawn up for free because my king, remember the plan I said before, my king is going to get into f6. If this pawn was still on the g7 square, it would never be possible and this game would be drawn. But because it isn't, the double pawn still exists. I get king to f6, once again offering up the c4 pawn. I can offer this pawn up because these 3 pawns are going to fall, all right? I'm going to be able to gobble these 2 pawns up way faster than he's going to be able to gobble up my pawns over here. And after king to e8 to try and hold on to everything, now and only now do I defend my pawn. And you're like, okay, well, wait a minute. The position is still even, material is still even, but now look at the king positioning. His king is stuck on the back rank. I've managed to create yet another weakness in my opponent's position while improving my own, all right? And now the position starts to tilt a little more in my favor. I go ahead, slam the rook down on the file, and now rook to b3 is listed as a great move because it defends the pawn, gets ready to push. Rooks belong behind past pawns. Pawn takes. I probably could have captured with the rook there. But then my opponent is in a tough position. He doesn't have any great moves to make, and he plays this move king to f8, to which I respond rook to a3. If rook takes b4, I have rook to a8, checkmate, ending the game on the spot. Once again, offering up another one of my pawns because remember, I'm exploiting my opponent's weakness, his king position. And remember, I was like, if I can get rid of this pawn, these 3 pawns will fall much faster than the ones over here. So I follow up on that idea, rook to a8, and now I don't play king takes f7 immediately. I want to play rook to f7 and then rook takes f7 because this pawn needs to fall. Rook to f8 is an essential move here. Rook takes b4, and now and only now do I play rook takes f7 because now the king is forced away from the defense of this e6 pawn. I capture it. And now my opponent realizes he's about to get 2 passed pawns. They're going to be very difficult to stop. So instead of trying to gobble this pawn on c5 immediately, he instead decides to play rook to b3. And now I capture while protecting this pawn. And now this is a standard rook endgame where the king is pushed too far away from ever being able to get in. All I have to do is move my rook in front of his rook being able to check. And now I'm just going to march this pawn down the board as we see it play out. King to f7, pawn to f5, and I have 16 seconds on the ticker here, but I believe I'm still playing this with pinpoint precision. His king tries to get in, tries to get over here, but I'm not allowing it. This rook right here isn't allowing anything into the position. Rook to f1, he's trying to reroute his pieces one more time. I check first, forcing his king back once again, and now and only now do I move my king out of the way of the pawn's queening square, right? King takes c5, and at this point I only had a couple seconds left. I was like, this pawn's queening no matter what. I'm going to get a queen no matter what I do. Let's eliminate his only other way of winning the game, his passed pawn. And once again, before I queen, I make sure I check. And now here, check, promotion, and my opponent resigns the game as he was about to run out of time anyway. And after takes, it's just over. I have a king and a rook versus a lone king. Checkmate will follow. The computer evaluates checkmate in 26. I don't know if I would have been able to see all that, but nonetheless, I would have been able to get the George W. Bush, all right? There were a lot of lessons in this game. I hope I was able to explain how I created a weakness in my opponent's position, exploited that weakness, and then convert it into another weakness while improving my position slowly but steadily. There are a lot of in-game lessons in that one. Hopefully you guys got not only entertainment, but some education from it as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.